Welcome to my channel, Delightful Stories. I'll be happy if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Enjoy watching and don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments about the story. Alaska smiled modestly. She was in her 40s. Justin knew her well. She lived just around the corner, a short walk away. And she often came to the local tramp with requests. He drank heavily and the woman had to do all the housework alone. In the private sector, it's a lot of cases, and without a strong male hand just cannot do. That was the nickname of a local homeless man who was ready to help everyone. He was a teetotaler and he was not old yet, only his beard and mustache gave him 10 years on top. "Come in, Alaska. What's up?" he asked in the manner of a recent Russian classic. "Oh, Justin, you're the only beautiful speech I hear. It makes my heart rejoice." Alaska worked in school, a philologist to the bone. She read in the evenings. She liked to quote Brodsky by Bunin, and once she managed to get involved with an alcoholic like Frank. Justin could not understand that such an intelligent, well-mannered person like Alaska found in it the epitome of the word bumpkin. Apparently, love is evil after all, and opposites attract more often than one would like. "I'm sorry, I've read too much into it. What do you want, Alaska?" The bum smiled with his red hair. "Yesterday's hurricane knocked down the tree fence, damaged it. My chickens run into the neighbor's house, and there are flowers planted there. My neighbor yells for me to take the chickens away, but they still come out. I have to remove the tree, fix the fence. My swarm is asleep as usual. He's been drinking since Tuesday, so it's been 4 days. Yeah, that's right. Can you help me?" "Sure, let's go." All the locals turned to Justin if they needed a man's hands, and local old ladies, widows, and couples who, because of age, related illnesses, could not dig up the garden or clean the cowshed themselves. Yes, people kept cattle in this part of town. There was even a shepherd who drove the herd out of town. In fact, it was a village on the outskirts of town. But like many cities, it did not reach the status of a millionaire. Their center annexed the territory of the village to itself, thereby expanding its borders. According to documents, they are all townspeople and even built new high-rise buildings in the center. But in fact, they are villagers and live in the middle of nowhere, where there are no roads, no streetlights, no abnormal transportation. Justin worked almost 0 hours straight. The work was difficult, hard. Alaska ran for tools and nails every now and then to help with whatever she could. "Thank you. The fence looks even better than it did before the storm. You nailed the bar at the bottom." "Oh, that's nice. Now the neighbor's dog won't sneak in. He even dug a hole in there. You see, Justin, when my chickens came out into their yard, the police threatened me. It got to the point of a scandal. And when their dog drove my chickens off, trampled my flower beds, that's okay. Alaska is upset." She lowered her head. Good woman she was, quiet and not at all conflicted. Justin shook his head at the hens for causing a scandal. "You'd better watch your nerves." "Not really, Alaska people. They're neighbors," he smiled. Alaska smiled too. No one had ever called her Alaska, and she was very pleased with that. The literature and Russian teacher immediately felt like the heroine of one of her favorite historical novels or the heroine of the Series Institute for Noble Maidens. That's the least of it. In addition, it was nice that the man took her side, stood up for her. She had not seen such support from her husband, not even in words. He drank and beat her and drank again. And then he went to work. He was sober, but he was even worse when he was sober. It was only in the rare moments when Frank was sober that we were in good spirits. Alaska remembered why she had fallen in love with the man and why she had married him. Divorcing him would have been the best thing to do. But Alaska had always held back from taking that step, that her son Max should grow up with his father, receive a man's upbringing. When it came to divorce, Frank would either swear and hit Alaska or swear his love for her. But if he did hit her, the next day he invariably gave her gifts, became docile and compliant, and begged her to keep the family together. Everyone told Alaska that it was high time to leave Serioga. And it wasn't even the drinking. He could quit for a year and not even think about drinking. It had happened to him before. It was the fact that Frank had raised his hand against Alaska, and she was used to covering up the bruises on his face. "Thank you, Justin. You're a good man," said Alaska, and handed him 3 $10 bills. "I won't take that much. It's too much." "No, it's not. One is enough. You know I'm not burdened with worries. I live with a pirate." "I ask you to take it, or I'll be embarrassed to ask you another time," she said, insisting. Justin did take one of the 3 bills. He thanked me and walked off into the distance. Justin was not a bum in the known sense of the word. Almost 5 years ago, he was a regular family man. He lived in the heart of downtown on his 40th birthday. His wife's parents had given them a trip to the United States. They came back from the trip with a ton of impressions. For Justin, it was the most unforgettable 2 weeks of his life. That trip made him realize he could live differently, that the world was wider than the borders of his small town. He also fell in love with his wife all over again. Ellie was beautiful, but years of marriage had blurred his vision and made him forget about it. They lived, I guess, like everyone else. The wife worked in a beauty salon. Nature had given her a gorgeous appearance, a figure. And she inspired other women by her example, helped them to fight with Helsinki. Justin, on the other hand, had no desire for her. His parents died early. He was just a child, and Ellie became the only person close to him in the world. Almost immediately after the wedding, she gave him a daughter, Jules. Jules was already in high school. She grew up to be beautiful and smart. When Justin returned from his trip, it was as if he had been born again. He opened his own small business, which in a short time bought itself. He dreamed of expanding and getting into it full time, and even submitted his resignation from his main job. Every day he told or what he would do when he got rich, what a beautiful house he would buy. Allie was dreaming of a yacht, and Justin had even found out the cost of it already, until something happened that turned his whole life upside down. That night, Justin came home early because he was able to get a quicker look at the property. He bought his wife flowers and was going to make a delicious dinner with a bottle of wine. He remembered well going up the stairs, anticipating the joy of 21 red roses. Then he noticed the door was open, and it was strange. Ellie never left the apartment open. Justin made his way inside and realized even on the threshold what was going on because his wife could be heard all over the apartment. He forgot to take his shoes off and just walked toward the sound. They didn't even make it to the bed, settling in the kitchen. Justin walked in there and found his adored spouse in the arms of his best friend, Ions of his best friend, Ian. They had been friends since childhood. All their lives they had fought together back at school, and then Ian witnessed their wedding. He always said how lucky Justin was to have a wife, and it wasn't long before Lip got divorced. He was telling Justin that he had gotten another woman, that he was crazy about her, but Justin had no idea it was his wife he was talking about. And the scoundrel didn't hide anything except the name of his new sweetheart. He'd openly said he was dating a married woman and was going to take her away from her horny husband. Now Justin found out who that woman was. Justin gassed Ally and began hastily pulling on her clothes. Justin froze in place and stood like that until Ian pulled on his pants. And then Justin came at him with his fists. Thankfully, my daughter wasn't home to see what happened next. Justin didn't remember his actions very well. It was a state of affect. He beat his best friend until he collapsed without feeling. Then he took a few steps away from him. "What have you done?" "He's not breathing." "Did you kill him?" shouted Ellie, who tried unsuccessfully to find a pulse on her lover's neck. Then Justin came to his senses, looked at his shattered fists, and went to his daughter's room. He underlined 2 lines to her. realizing that he wouldn't see her anytime soon now, and ran out of the apartment, nearly tripping over the bouquet. That night, he realized that he had killed a man, but he was not going to go to jail for it. What scared him more than prison, however, was that one day he would have to look into the eyes of Lip's mother, who had done him so much good in life. She was like a second mother to him, always feeding him and asking him to look after her son. She was a good woman and didn't deserve this, just like his daughter didn't deserve to be named the daughter of a criminal. "I didn't mean to kill," he whispered to himself. Justin walked until dawn appeared on the horizon. He had already gone out of town and found himself in a village. There he hid until he found an abandoned house. Locals told him that no one had lived in it for a long time. The house was in a very bad shape, but Justin had cleaned it up, although there was no wallpaper on the walls or linens. Of the furniture, there was an old spring, a bed, a bedstead, and a chair. The glass had already been broken, and some of the floorboards had been torn out right on the doorstep. Justin had fixed everything and even fixed the stove. He had been carrying wood from the woods all summer to keep it warm. There was no gas or light in the house. He lived like he used to. He read by candlelight in the evenings and borrowed books from the local library. The librarian was an elderly neighbor. Justin was helping her repair the porch. She called him to come by and borrow books. She fed him and made arrangements with the local store to give Justin the occasional item that was written off so he wouldn't starve. Reading all he had left in this dark, dark period of his life. For the first few months, he didn't leave the house. The locals began to scout who came from where, and Justin felt so bad that he couldn't talk and didn't want to eat. "I'm a tramp who came here from the city. Don't drive me away. If I have to do some rough work, I'm ready to help." The people he met were kind, and nobody called the police. On the contrary, they helped him and gave him things. Those who had extra and helped with foodstuffs. Everyone had their own garden that day and managed to warm some water for a bath. I kept soap and shampoo at home. Tried to live like everyone else. Justin stayed home for the winter, and by spring, he reconsidered everything and decided there was no point in blaming himself. He did what any man would do, except he'd overreacted. That wasn't the outcome he wanted. Justin prayed for the repose of his soul, Lip, and felt himself feel better. One day in the bitter cold, a neighbor asked me to help screw in a light bulb. By then, Justin had gotten someone's broken phone from the local trash and was using it, charging it in the library once every 5 days. Locals knew his number and called when they needed his help. He wouldn't sit idle, he'd screw in a light bulb. And after getting 3-liter pies for it, Justin would walk home. He was hungry and anticipating a good evening, when suddenly he heard a dog whimpering. It was lying by the roadside freezing. A local man was walking by. Yes, it was the grandchildren who came to visit Grandma this summer and left the dog here. And the woman died a month ago. The dog is no one's dog now. You want to keep it, he said. Justin looked into the dog's eyes and realized he didn't dare leave him here. He absorbed it and called the dog Limp. Justin followed and led it into the house and realized it was the boy who called the pirate. He fed 2 pies to him as the dog was severely emaciated. That day he had a friend and a desire to move on with his life. Justin and the pirate went for walks together, fishing together. Sometimes it wasn't easy. Food would run out, and for days at a time their diet consisted only of water and bread. Justin didn't dare steal. He knew they'd send him to the police, but God never left him without food at all. Every time he sent a local to meet him with his problems, Justin helped, and everyone gave him what they could, and he dared not ask. Sometimes they wouldn't give him anything for his help, but he'd say, "Come back anyway," and he would leave wishing him good health. He understood everyone was different and lived differently. Some gave food, others money. That was how he lived. In summer, Justin planted a small vegetable garden. He had his own cucumbers, tomatoes, and zucchini. He cooked well, only it got awfully hot in the house if he stoked the stove in the summer. There was no gas to cook a hot meal. Some dishes were given to him by the locals. Betty brought him a whole closet. She even gave him an old nightstand. Shared a couple of plates with spoons and forks. She was a very kind, caring person. And Justin always went to her rescue and refused to take money. And Alaska would sometimes call him to help just to feed her, to give her cash. She did so when and gave her paycheck, feeling sorry for Justin. She had no girlfriends or entertainment. There was only hard work at school, a pile of notebooks to check on the housekeeping. Yes, 8-year-old Maxim. And with Justin, Alaska could talk about literature, the weather, anything. Their communication instantly formed, as if they spoke the same language. And even though Justin was a local maverick and Alaska a respected educator, they liked to talk to each other for a long time. Alaska would tell him about her problems and feel relieved. And Justin managed to listen and did so with joy. Except that he couldn't tell anyone about his worries. There was a pirate waiting for Justin at home. Hungry, my friend. You're always hungry. Look what you've got. Justin smiled, showing the dog the $10 bill. Stubbornly, continuing to wag his tail like an electron broom. All right, let's get some canned goods and pasta myself, and I'll get something for tea. I haven't had sweets in a long time. Justin told the dog to sit still, and he complied. The pirate fell asleep and laid his head on the wooden floor, thus promising to miss his master greatly. The weather outside was fine. It was warm enough. There was almost no wind, and the clouds blocked out the hot sun, which could turn this nice September day into a scorcher. Justin made his way to the nearest supermarket, which was built on the outskirts of the village closer to town. All local goods went there. They were considerably cheaper. Over the years of his life here, Justin had become a good acquaintance to all the employees of the store. They didn't treat him like the city's homeless, or chase him away with a fucking broom, but on the contrary, they served him with a smile. Justin rarely went to the supermarket, partly because money didn't come in every day. But there was another reason. He knew how unlikely it was, but he was still afraid he'd run into someone he knew there. Of course, they lived miles from the outskirts, and there was certainly nothing for them to do in this place. But what if he'd run into someone from a past life of work colleagues, from which he'd quit shortly before he'd disappeared, or his daughter? Jules had been a teenager when Justin left home. He well remembered leaving her a note on the table in her room. In it he wrote, "Sorry, daughter, I have to leave. Your mother will explain everything to you. When the time comes, I love you." All he could think of at that moment was that going to jail for betraying his wife would be a terrible fate. He didn't want that for himself or for Jules. She went to a regular school, and kids were cruel. If everyone knew that their classmate, the daughter of an inmate, was in trouble, people would change their attitude toward her. Justin was well aware of this, and it was the decisive argument for simply fleeing the scene. Despite his state of affect, Justin ran all these thoughts through his head and made a deliberate decision that he hadn't remembered in 5 years. The supermarket doors opened in front of an overgrown man in a shabby old addition, and Justin entered a world of groceries and necessities. At times like this, he remembered picking up a whole basket here and carrying it back to the Julesne afterward. He didn't count the money because his paycheck on his card was more than enough for everything. Now he had to count. "Hello," said the young girl who was setting out the sodas on the shelf. "Hello, Cheryl." Justin smiled. That's when he heard the screams. It was uncharacteristic for this place. Justin saw the exact woman arguing with the vendors. She wasn't just resenting the prices, but blaming the particular guy who wasn't guilty of anything at all, showering him with insults. The woman walked proudly to the cash register. Justin went to get canned goods and pasta, poured some candy into a bag, and began to move in line to pay for his purchases. However, there was no way the woman was leaving. The line stalled and she pounced on an elderly grandmother who could not find her purse in any way. "I have a son coming, my son," from the rotation. "I haven't seen him in 6 months. This is the 3rd time I've cooked him a nice dinner tonight. I'm going to find my purse." Wait a minute. The lady and her basket were towering over a woman who was several decades older than she was. And why don't you sit at home at that age? There are social workers who hold everyone back. No shame, no conscience. People have their own things to do. You should already think about the eternal white slippers, and not about the eternal white slippers, and not about the sausage issued a formidable fatty. Justin couldn't take it anymore. He looked out of line and saw that the amount on the scoreboard was $9.73. He put his groceries on the counter and walked through the line. "Well, shut up," he shouted to the woman, and the woman was taken aback. Justin just couldn't stand that kind of attitude. He put his bill on the cashier's plate, and the grandmother was immediately served. The line began to move on, and Justin took the elderly woman by the hand and led her out of the store. She began to cry and hurl insults at her. "Thank you. Thank you. I don't like to go shopping, but my son is coming to visit and I miss him so much. Come with me. Don't go. I owe you a refund. Honey." She turned to Justin. "Don't, it's okay," he said. Barbara insisted, and Justin was soon in her humble apartment. The apartment smelled like delicious food. There were pictures of his son hanging all over the house. Justin realized this because he looked a lot like his mother. The same thin, long, notion chin and big expressive eyes. Grandma fed Justin some soup and let him go, giving him $10. What did he spend on her purchase? "Do you have a phone?" Justin asked. "At the threshold." "Of course there is," Grandma answered. "Write down my number. I live near here and I can help you if you need me to go to the store or to the pharmacy. You don't know if you need anything." "You're welcome. I'm out of work now and I'm always glad to help." Justin dictated his number to her and left. On his way back, he stopped at the store, where the sweet cashier heartily thanked him for shutting up that unceremoniously accurate lady who had managed to insult almost everyone. Justin bought everything he needed and returned home. "Did you miss me?" he asked the dog, who was ready to jump on top of Justin for joy. He made porridge, added canned goods to it. He divided it in half. He put the food out on 2 plates. The pirate ate on the floor, and Justin at the table. Afterwards, they went for a walk. It was getting hot in the house. After cooking, the stove was too puffy. But there was no other way to cook the food anyway. Justin considered plugging in all the lights, but the locals disappointed him by saying that there was a huge debt on the lights from the previous owner. They weren't paying. He could, of course, wire it up and use the power quietly, but Justin was afraid he'd be turned into the authorities for it. After all, there would probably be someone who would wonder why I was paying for the lights, and he wasn't, so he didn't take any chances. Toward evening, Justin and Pirate went for a walk. Pirate liked to run around the neighborhood, scaring the cats and barking at all the passers-by. Justin was always afraid that he would bite someone and there would be a scandal. So he made him a collar and only let him off his leash for walks when they didn't make it to the vacant lot near the local pond. But let the little one run, he smiled, and let the dog go. Pirate ran in circles, and when he got tired, they went back home. It was getting chilly, and Justin thought it might be a good idea to fire up the stove. Besides, warm tea and candy would be a dream after such a walk. But his dreams weren't going to come true. On the way back, Justin heard scary screams from Alaska's house. Both she and the baby were screaming. But it was her husband, Justin, who rushed over there the hardest, rushing through the gawking neighbors who had gathered around to see how it would end. "What are you standing around for?" shouted Justin to the people. No one moved a muscle. They'll figure it out for themselves. As usual, one of the neighbors waved his hand. Justin was horrified by this carelessness. They'd still be on the bench here, sitting down to seed. And if the house had burned down, they would have come out just to watch, too. Justin burst inside and saw Frank punching Alaska in the face, delivering one blow after another. He was punching with his fist and yelling something against the wall with his hands pressed to his face. Maximka was sitting there shouting, "Come here." With that, Justin rushed to Frank, but he tossed him. Justin understood. The man was out of his mind. It was white heat. He was probably mad as hell and yelling something unrelated in the kitchen. "There are thieves in your kitchen. Hurry up and go there. They're waiting for you." "Come on," he started composing as he went along. Justin realized that he was dealing with complete inadequacy. But at the same time, Frank was very big and clearly stronger than Justin. "Where are they?" Frank yelled and went into the kitchen, still not knowing what was going on. At this time, Justin led Alaska and her son out of the house. They locked Frank inside. "Someone call an ambulance," Justin quickly commanded, to a crowd of onlookers. The neighbor reluctantly pulled out his phone and started calling. "I don't feel well," Alaska said. Justin looked at her. Her cheeks were swollen red. "Have a seat." He sat her down on the bench behind the fence. Alaska held on and held Maxim tighter to him. "He won't come out. Don't be afraid. And if it does, he can't get to you here. There's a fence. And my dog doesn't like drunks." "How are you, Maximka?" Justin asked. The kid got less. "He only hit me once," so he was still figuring something out. Soon the neighbor came in with the bird. She helped me dress the wounds. When the ambulance arrived, Justin handed Alaska over to the paramedics. Frank was only given a shot to put him to sleep, and social services were called. 4 local men had to be called in to restrain him. The ambulance driver also helped. Alaska, on the other hand, was told at once he had a concussion. "You need to write a statement," the woman doctor told her. Alaska only shook her head. "Alaska, are you making a mistake? It will never stop. You have to understand. You have to write," Justin said. He couldn't believe he would write a statement on the wall, even after Frank raised his hand against the child. "Okay, it's time to go," said the doctor. "We'll talk when you get back," Justin said seriously. When Alaska was taken away, soon another woman came to get Frank, and they took him to another hospital, a place where people like him were treated. Justin and the pirate went home leisurely. She didn't even want to punish him for it. Can you imagine? It's almost the 5th time I've watched her live with that monster. He hit her even when he wasn't drunk. It's not the drinking. It's that he's nothing but a coward. A man would never lay a hand on a woman. "You see, I have a cameraman," Justin said. He looked at his master and ran along. It always seemed to Justin that this dog was so smart that he was about to talk. He told him everything, even the most unpleasant stories of his life that had brought him here. This evening, Justin could not sleep for a long time. Pirate, too, was fiddling with his smoke at the head of the bed. He never got into bed with his master. He slept on the floor. For him, Justin had set aside a single rug he'd found in the trash and washed. He saw that the dog slept at the headboard and put the rug there, not by the bed, so he could get his feet up on it. In the morning, Justin saw from the window that Alaska had returned from the hospital. He got dressed and hurried to her. "May I?" he asked through the gate, seeing her in the yard hanging laundry. "Come in, Justin," she said. Unhappily, Justin entered the wicket, leaving the disgruntled pirate at the fence. Justin ordered the dog to sit, and he obediently lowered himself to the grass. He should have been tethered, of course, but no one else was likely to be here this early. 6-0, are you up yet?" he asked. "I couldn't sleep. I arrived last night. Maximka is asleep." "Why didn't you write a statement?" he asked straight out. Alaska didn't look at Justin. She was nervously hanging up the damp sheets. "He is sick. He will be treated. He beats you all the time. Forgive me for meddling, But I can't just watch him do this to you. What if he killed you yesterday? You were thinking about the baby. Alaska, wake up. This isn't marriage or life. Get rid of him with a fucking broom. If he'd hit Maxim a little harder, you weren't thinking about that. Alaska suddenly cried. Justin came over and put his arm around her, holding her close to him. It was so unexpected for both of them that Alaska quickly calmed down and looked at the bearded young man. He was about 10 years older than she was, but not yet old. For the first time, she saw something different about him, something she hadn't noticed before. You know, I just can't stand to see him do this to you anymore. If you decide to get back together with him after all this, I'll probably leave the village altogether. I don't have the strength anymore. He spoke sincerely, and Alaska was only now beginning to realize that he had feelings for her, and she felt sympathy for him too, but nothing more. She knew nothing about him. This conversation was going nowhere. Alaska was silent, pondering Justin's words, and he thought she was just waiting for him to leave with his moralizing and revelations. So he left her in silence without saying goodbye. When he got home, he really thought about changing his place of residence. What if he went back to the city, served his time? Now that Jules had graduated, it wouldn't be so hard. Justin lay down on the bed and turned to the wall. The house was chilly, but he didn't feel like getting up, so the pirate lay back in his seat as if to show solidarity with his master's mood. Justin was reminded of a girl in a beautiful school uniform. No one knew, but Justin had come to his daughter's last call at school and was lost in the crowd thanks to a youth-hooded sweatshirt and dark glasses he had found in the trash. He didn't see his wife in the crowd. Surely she must have become an ex by now, having been reported missing, unaccounted for, and divorced. Day didn't look at his daughter and couldn't admire her. She was a beauty, but he had to leave quickly so as not to draw attention to himself. He couldn't risk it. Besides, it was eerily hot in the hooded sweater. The day was gone, she wept. She didn't see, no one saw or recognized him. Although Justin had seen many people he knew, he realized that day that he didn't miss his past life. It was like it wasn't his life. All he missed was his daughter and maybe his apartment. He had lived there for many years, had experienced the happiest moments of his life. On the other hand, a lot of bad things had also happened there. Toward evening, Justin heard the sound of a text message on his cell phone. He was sure he was going to read another reminder from the Ministry of Emergency Situations that bad weather was expected tomorrow. But the message was of a different nature. Come to the first park bench at 7:00 p.m. I'll be waiting. Don't be afraid, I want to help. Justin raised his eyebrows. Someone wants to help me. And why did you think I was scared? The pirate looked at his master understandingly, but didn't say anything, though you could see in his eyes that the dog had something to say. It was still light outside. He put on his dark glasses. It was at least a 40-minute walk into town, and he wasn't planning on using transportation. Justin was used to walking on his own 2 feet, and he liked the tiredness in his legs. The period remained. Justin ordered him to watch the house. The dog was bored while his master was away, and Justin knew it. He made his way to the park and sat down on a bench. His legs were aching with fatigue. What if the police picked him up here? Justin knew that was a possibility. He knew there was always that possibility. So he decided to just postpone that moment. Justin sat in the park for no more than 10 minutes. Soon a blond man approached him. He recognized him immediately. It was the man from the picture on the walls of the house of that elderly woman he had helped out at the supermarket. Justin was relieved. He probably wanted to ask him something. Good afternoon. I'm glad you came. Justin greeted the stranger too. They shook hands and sat down on the bench. The guy's name was Winston. His mother had given him that name in honor of his father. Now at least Justin knew the name of the affable grandmother who had been so prepared for her son's arrival. "I'm sorry that I distracted you from your business. It's just that I'm going away soon, and I wanted to ask you to come with me on the watch. My mother told me you helped her, and I'm very grateful to you. You're a good man. There's not many like you these days. She mentioned that you were unemployed, so I thought I'd return the favor. If you can't find a good job here, come with me. I make pretty good money. I work at a checkpoint. My partner's just quitting." Justin listened to him and realized that he could not take advantage of the generous offer. "Thank you, of course. But you're overreacting about being a good person. You don't know anything about me. What else do I need to know? The essence of humanity is manifested in these kinds of actions. Thank you, of course. But I probably won't be able to go on the shift with you. You need papers there, and I've been living without them for 5 years now." Justin was tired of keeping things to himself. He poured out his whole sad story to a stranger, told his wife about how he'd killed his friend, about how he lived now. Winston listened to him and lit a cigarette. Justin asked for a cigarette and took a drag with him. They were silent for a long time. "I would have done exactly the same thing." "What killed, that's for sure?" Winston asked, breaking the heavy silence. There were a lot of people in the park. They came and went. Justin made sure he kept his sunglasses on so no one would recognize him. His red mustache and beard did the job just fine as it was. Besides, he had lost at least 20 pounds. He could feel it in his clothes, in the way he began to walk easily. It turned out that starving himself wasn't so bad. Or rather, of course it was bad, but there were advantages to such a life, too. I don't know. Or screamed that he did. I didn't wait for the ambulance and the police to arrive. I left as I was, and that's how I live. Winston that night promised to find out everything. Had there been a report, was Justin wanted. He also promised to find out where the grave was. Justin wanted to repent, to bring flowers. His conscience still tormented him. He was no longer as fierce, though. Sure, he was guilty, but not enough to part with his life in the bloom of years. They talked for a long time. Winston told him that he was taking his mother to Moscow. He had saved up money for a small room in a dormitory and wanted her to be near him. And the medicine is better there. He also promised to find out from his boss whether he would accept an undocumented person for work. Winston really wanted to help repay the good for the good. Justin returned home after dark. His legs were aching, and he collapsed on his bed and covered himself with a blanket. "I'm sorry, buddy. Let's go tomorrow. It's too late to burn the stove today, and it's not good to eat before going to bed." So the pirate got bored and lowered his head sadly, apparently disagreeing with his master's last statement. No sleep came that night. Justin thought a lot and decided to leave. He just had to tell the pirates somehow. Who to leave him here? Of course he wasn't sure he'd be taken in another city without work papers. But if Winston said yes, Justin decided he would, and this decision caused him an inner contradiction. He was suddenly desperate to stay, even if not right here. After all, he had long ago begun to think about moving out of here, looking for another home. Alaska tore at his heart. He was more attached to it than he should have been. All this kept him awake that night. In the morning, a knock on the window woke him up. The pirate began to bark. "Who else is there?" Justin whispered, getting out of bed. He opened the door and saw Alaska on the threshold. She stepped inside and was clearly nervous. "I'm sorry I woke you up. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Justin. I'll be on a first-name basis if you don't mind," she began. Justin lowered himself onto the bed, offering Alaska a seat in the chair. "What's wrong?" he asked, all still not understanding what was going on. The pirate sat down next to the table and looked Alaska in the eye. He probably wanted to beg for food. Or maybe he was just listening intently. I realized that you were right, and I don't want to live like that anymore. I decided to file for divorce and told my son about it. To my surprise, Maxime supported me. He said he hadn't wanted to live with a daddy like that for a long time, but he kept quiet and didn't tell me about it because he thought I loved him. He didn't want to put me in front of a choice, you know? And I didn't want to put me in front of a choice. He didn't want to be deprived of his father. Turns out it was that simple. You opened my eyes, and I wanted to tell you that I was grateful for everything. Justin smiled. I'm glad. It's the right thing to do. It might save your life, you and your son. But how will Frank feel about it? I already told him everything. And he's packing now. My son is in school. And I came to see you because I don't want to see Frank. I'll stay until he leaves, okay? She asked. Of course I have candy. Let's put the kettle on. Justin started fussing about the household, lit the stove in the house, and it got cozy. I can't believe he let you go so easily. I thought there would be dust to this guy's scandal, Justin said. I thought so too. Surprisingly, even he became ashamed. It looked like he'd struck out that he'd brought himself to this state. They asked him out of his job because of it. So he's going to work somewhere up north. His brother works there. I can't believe it's resolved so quickly. He promised to help Maxime send money and said he would sign the divorce papers. He was thankful that I didn't have to sign the divorce papers. The doctors passed the information about the beatings to the police. There was still something human in him. Justin frowned. You better tell me, how did that human get out of the asylum so quickly? They must have taken him there. I don't know exactly, Justin. Frank said the doctor turned out to be a co-worker of his. Fixed him up, let him go. Then everything is clear. They were drinking tea. Alaska looked out the window. She had a large bruise on her cheek, which made her eye look smaller. Alaska didn't complain, but she was constantly dizzy and sore. But she didn't know how to be sick at all. She preferred to get things done, to clean up. I have a proposition, Justin said. Which one? Let's go to the woods. Do you need some fresh air and a break from the whole situation? Maxime won't be here for a while. We'll go for a walk. Can I tell you about the last book I read? Alaska smiled. Good. It will be better then. They went into the woods before winding circles around them and getting their dirty paws dirty, hugging happily. They talked about literature, about everything. This time Alaska tried to elicit personal information from Justin. She asked him about his past. He had a hard time answering. He was quick to change the subject, making jokes. They wandered through the woods for about an hour, and then came back at the fork where we were to go one way and Justin the other. She asked, "You're not going anywhere now, are you?" But except the home, he smiled. I mean what you said yesterday. You said if I got off with Frank, you'd leave the village. You're not leaving now, are you? Justin lowered his eyes. That's what she's about. Very untimely. The eternal drama. As soon as he decides to leave, to change his miserable life for the better, there's an excuse to stay. Why didn't she say yesterday that she was going to break up with her husband? Justin had already given his word that he would leave with Winston. I was offered a job. It's not about you. Really, I want to have normal living conditions. I've been homeless for too long. My old wounds have healed and I can leave. But it would be a shift. Alaska came closer. What kind of shift? A month after a month, she asked, tears welling up in her eyes. Justin put his arm around her. Yes, a month. In a month, I was offered to stay in Moscow for good. That month, I would take another job. That's what a lot of people do there, Alaska cried. What is it, Master? Justin tried to comfort her. Don't go away. I don't want you to go. Justin was at a loss. He didn't know what to say. He just stood there in silence while she cried. He stroked her hair, not sure what he should do next. But it wasn't certain yet. All he could say then. Alaska wiped away her tears and went home to her house, where Frank was now gone. Justin had dreamed about it all the 5 years he'd lived here. Or rather, he had forbidden himself to dream about it. That didn't go well. I kind of gave her hope, threatened to leave. She broke up with her husband. What if it was because of me? What if it was because of me? What if she liked me for who I was? He asked the pirate and smoked. Resting his head on his leg, it was hard to think of having to leave him here. Leave you alone. I'll ask Alaska to look after you. I promised the Emperor. But that didn't make the dog happy. Toward evening, Justin was called for a part-time job by a local retiree. He helped fix the roof and made another $10. Remembering where the last bill had taken him, he smiled and met the grandmother and her son. And now perhaps this encounter would change his life. Already at sunset, Justin went to the store and bought pasta, chicken, and sweets for tea. That was the end of the money. Well, here's a tasty dinner tonight, he told the pirate. Justin melted the oven and made soup. He had tomatoes, green onions. There was salt in the bed and even a bay leaf somewhere. The soup was delicious before the pasta. Justin himself liked the broth better. After supper, the last candle was burning. Justin regretted not buying candles this time. He should not have spent the money on sweets. Now he would have to pass the time in the dark. He and the pirate sat on the bench for a long time, looking at the lights of the village, at the stars. The house where he did not belong was raised on a hill, and from there he had a good view of the other houses, including Frank's house. There were lights burning in it. Justin imagined Alaska learning lessons with Maxim. She was so quiet and patient and crying so sincerely for him today. Was there something good in his life? Something real? Is he really ready to brush it off? But if not to leave, how to live? Suppose he asks Alaska to be with him. What can he give her? How would he explain why he lives without papers? Would she accept him if she knew he had killed his wife's lover? She is hardly an aristocrat, a lover of poetry, romances. Criminals are definitely not a match. She already had one. Just moved out today. Justin decided it wasn't going to work anyway. With Alaska, he forbade himself not to think and went to bed. And at night he dreamed that she was hugging him, as if they were living together. And Alaska was baking him delicious pies. It must have been the hunger. Justin ate those pies in his dreams, and he could even taste them. He dreamt that Maximka called him Daddy, and Jules was somewhere near them, and it felt so good and easy on his soul. He hadn't felt this way in a long time, even if he was dreaming, but it felt good all the same. In the morning, Justin was awakened by a phone call. It was Winston. "Good morning, brother," he said. Justin was pleased that he called him brother. He'd grown weary of human kindness. "Good morning. Could you come over to my mom's apartment tonight around 6:00? Justin looked at his phone. It was only 7 o'clock. "Yeah, okay. Is there any news?" he asked. "You only get good news. You can pack your bags. We're going on watch." Winston answered cheerfully. Justin, hanging up the phone, promised to be there. All day long he wondered what to pack and in what. He was sure that Winston had found a way to set him up without paperwork. Many people work that way nowadays, especially in Moscow. The bosses are more profitable not to pay taxes. Justin left the pirate at home and left with a heavy heart. He hated to leave him. The pirate was his only friend here, throwing a glance at the Alaskan house. He sighed heavily, and he didn't want to leave her either. He had almost confessed his feelings to her the day she had just returned from the hospital. But why had he done that? She had driven her husband away, and Justin would just go away now. He shook his head to blame himself for the whole situation. There was hope in his heart that he would go away to work and Alaska would look after the dog. and that one day would come to take her, Maxim, and the pirate to Moscow, that things would work out for him there, and he would get a place to live. The dreams burst like a balloon. As soon as Justin remembered that, in order to buy a house in Moscow, a simple worker needs to work for 40 years. And how could I register it for myself afterwards? Hardly any of this was possible. He could hardly give Alaska hope and ask her to wait. He didn't know when he could come, or if he could come, or if he could come at all. Justin reached the house and went up to the already familiar apartment. There was no intercom. The usual wooden doors that had seen, if not dinosaurs, then Lenin for sure. A good-natured Winston mother greeted him on the doorstep, hugged him like family, and ushered him into the kitchen. They made tea and put pies on the table for Justin. He ate them. Realizing he had been hungry for too long, he decided he would definitely get one pie for the pirate. You just couldn't have it any other way. Unfairly, Justin couldn't eat by himself. Know that his faithful friend would be hungry. "I have good news for you," Winston began. The three of them sat at the table, the mother, her son, and Justin. "What's the news?" Not Tommy. "I called work and found out that you could get a job with me on the shift. And from there you can leave here or live there with us. Mom has already started packing her bags. Here we go. I don't want to leave. I have friends here. I go to a literary club here. My mother intervened in the conversation. We've already discussed it. I can't leave you here alone. Even Justin is leaving." Winston put his hand on his mother's arm, and Justin quietly envied them. They have each other, and that was so great. Justin barely remembered his parents. "I don't want to leave either. I have a dog. His name is Pirate. And I don't even know who to leave him for," Justin admitted to support his mother. Suddenly, a woman's voice rang out behind him and made Justin flinch. "I can take your dog." Justin turned around and saw his adult daughter, Jules, about a meter away. She was standing there almost crying for joy. Justin was taken aback, and Winston's mother wept. "Where have you been?" "I've been looking for your daddy for so long," she said, and hugged him. Winston wiped away a tear, too, clutching his mother's hand tighter. "How did you get here?" Justin asked. "I can't believe my eyes." My feelings took over at that moment, and the tears flowed by themselves, and Jules started wiping them off her own father's face and cried too. "Winston found me. I know everything, Dad. Mom lied to me for a long time, and I thought you just left us. She only confessed a year ago. I was still in high school, and she packed up and went to Paris to see her next rich boyfriend. She left me, and I lived alone. I was only 17, and the child welfare authorities almost sent me to an orphanage. Luckily, her parents wouldn't let them, but you would take me in to live with you. They didn't. They just came over once in a while. So she was the one who abandoned me. She confessed that you caught them with a boyfriend and beat him up and then left." "Is he dead?" Justin asked. Just to confirm. He had little doubt that he had killed him then. "No, what's in it for him? Guys like him don't die, Dad. Nobody needs them out there to take them away so soon. You did the right thing. I don't blame you. It's just too bad you didn't know the bastard was alive. That's why you were hiding," Justin cried. What a relief to know he had no mortal sin on him. And in vain he read a prayer in the evenings for the repose of his soul. "Lord, daughter, forgive me. I acted like a coward. I just miscalculated my strength and thought I'd killed a man. I figured if I just disappeared, you'd have less trouble. It's better to have a missing father involved in a crime than a father who's been convicted and sent to prison. Isn't it? I thought I embarrassed you, that you wouldn't forgive me. After all, it's better to have a father who didn't kill anybody at all. And you didn't. It's your mother's fault. She cheated on you. I'm sorry too, Dad. I knew, but she wouldn't let me talk. I caught her with him, and my mother threatened me to keep quiet. And then I came home from school, and she was putting this scumbag on my head. He didn't even go to the hospital. He and my mom didn't break up right away after that. They dated for a year more, and no one sued. Mom, she wanted to leave you. So she filed for divorce when you were reported missing. And then she started seeing one guy and another. The last guy called her to Paris, and she left without even asking me if I wanted to go with her. She said I was an adult, and she never called. I don't care. Jules was crying too. They didn't let each other out of their arms for a long time, and then Grandma made everyone cheers. Thank you. You gave me the best surprise of my life, Justin told Winston. You stood up for my mom. So you're welcome. So are we going? He asked. Justin looked at Jules. It's a watch. Go, Dad. I'm taking the dog for myself. The apartment is mine now. You registered it in my name in the first place. Mom's not even registered there. Now you'll come and visit me. I'm tired of living alone. Justin couldn't help but admire it. Jules had clear blue eyes, curly brown hair just below her shoulders, and bangs that kept falling on her forehead. Jules so amused to see her. I have so much to tell you. Daughter, Justin remembered Alaska, and it made him sad that if we all stayed to live here. Winston's mother asked. I don't want to break up with you every time, because you can rent out your room to students and live here on the money. You can go into photography like you always wanted to. I have a pension. I've got my whole life here. You used to live here too. And why do you want to live in Moscow? Look at all the beautiful girls living here. She pointed to Jules. Jules lowered her eyes in embarrassment, as did Winston. Justin caught it. They definitely liked each other. Considering that Winston was about 10 years older than Jules, they might well have had an affair. The thought flashed through Justin's mind, but it was immediately pushed aside by Winston's protests. He began urging his mother to move, arguing that even Justin had agreed to go to the capital. To be honest, I'm not burning with the desire to leave. It's not about the place, it's about the people. Your mom has friends here, and I have one woman and my daughter. I don't want to leave now. I don't even want to leave here for a month, even for the time of the shift. Honestly, maybe I don't give a damn about Moscow. Winston, let's decide that if you help me, I'll help you. When I left home, I quit my job at a good firm, so I think they might take me back, and there's a place for you. I read in the papers that they've expanded, taken on new premises, especially since there really are some very beautiful girls living here. Justin winked at Jules, and she was embarrassed again. Surprisingly, this argument worked. Winston decided he was staying. They sat around the table for a long time, drinking tea and talking, crying and laughing. Justin, out of habit, wanted to walk home, but Jules shoved some bills in his hand and asked him to take the bus. She urged her father to go home, but he couldn't leave the pirate alone. His grandmother, when she saw Justin off, gave him a whole bag of cakes to take with her. It was so unfamiliar to stand at the bus stop and not have to hide, to get on the buses, to ride with everyone else, to have both food and money in his hands. In recent years, he had managed to keep either one or the other. He got there in 15 minutes and soon came home, fed the pirate, telling him that they would soon have another life, and it would be better. It was almost 11 o'clock, and there were no lights on in the Alaskan windows. But Justin couldn't wait a minute. He left the pirates in the house and went to her place. He knocked softly on the window. Someone followed the creak of the door. It's me, Alaska, Justin, he answered. The door closed and she came out to him in a long white nightgown and tight top. What happened, Justin? She asked him habitually. At work, Alaska was used to calling both teachers and parents by their patronymics. That was the way it was. She spoke to Justin in the same way, even though they were on a first-name basis. I came to show you this. He held out his passport to her. Alaska unfolded it. She read it fervently. Justin, born in 1976. And what is this? I thought you said you didn't have papers. Now I do. Now I can tell you everything, and I can be your support. I'll get a job. I'm safe now. I'm free. Justin hugged and kissed Alaska. She, of course, responded to the kiss. Would you mind explaining what's going on? I couldn't before, but it just so happens that your $10 led me to the store where I met a nice woman. They sat down on the bench. Justin put his arms around Alaska and told her his whole story for a long time. She heard him warmly, wondering to herself and crying in places. Soon a pirate came running to them. The bully had learned how to open accounts and get out. Now I can go back and live like a human being, and I would like to have you in my life as my wife, as my woman. I just filed for divorce. Alaska laughed. We are in no hurry. We have our whole lives ahead of us now. It's been a year and a half. Justin and Winston worked at the firm together. They saved up money and started the business that Justin had dreamed of when he was still married to LA. Business was booming. Work brought only joy. Jules lived in her grandmother's apartment because not long ago she gave birth to Winston's son. He was now her husband, by the way. They fell in love with each other at first sight. When Winston decided to help Justin and came to Jules to arrange a meeting with his dad, he tracked her down and explained the situation and asked her to come to see him. Anna, of course, agreed and thanked him for everything. And later he found her again and invited her to a cafe, then to a movie. Within a month, they were living together in a separate apartment that Winston rented. Justin didn't hinder their relationship, even though he saw his perfect daughter as the same little girl he'd picked up from the maternity hospital. He couldn't imagine a better candidate for a son-in-law than Winston. And despite the age difference, they were happy with each other. Alaska and Justin became a couple and moved into his apartment as soon as Jules got together with Winston. Before that, Justin had taken the bus to her place almost every day, spending time with Maxim. He had known Justin for a long time and thought he was cool, so Maxim went to another school closer to downtown, where Alaska got a job commuting from downtown to the village. To the outskirts itself was tedious and long. Justin and Alaska quietly signed, and Alaska changed her and the baby's last name. They were now a Churchill. How was Justin? The argument was the phrase spouse. We are a family and we should have the same last name. Alaska couldn't get enough of Justin. He was so different from her ex-husband Frank. He was like heaven and earth. He was like heaven and earth. He was caring, understood her, shared her interests. They were a true couple, perfect for each other. Alaska became pregnant and gave birth to Justin's second daughter. She was named Selena. Justin was rushing home from work that day. Winston had asked to leave early. The baby boy was getting his teeth cut. Jules was tired, and so was Winston's mother, and he himself was in a hurry to change them for a hullabaloo. Justin walked and wondered how he could be a grandfather before he was a father to his second child. It happens that the mouse was 20 years old when the light was born, and the difference between Selena and Kara was only 6 months. And the father-daughter wedding was also the same year. Wait, Justin heard me. He turned around and saw him. He had not changed a bit. The last time he had seen him lying on the floor of his apartment in blood. An uneasy feeling came over him that he needed. Hello, Ian held out his hand to Justin, which he didn't go. Hello, Justin answered. My chest ached. Justin, I heard that you came back from overseas and started your own business overseas. But of course, Justin grinned and nodded. Let it be abroad. Let people think so. It's better than the truth about how he'd been hiding in a house without gas and lights for 5 years straight. Justin, I'm sorry. That was a hell of a thing to do. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I was so scared that I killed you. I didn't know if you were alive and I was worried for a long time. You deserved a punch in the face, of course, but I overreacted. and almost killed you. I'm sorry, I wasn't myself." Justin was relieved when he said this, as if the last piece of stone had fallen from his soul, and now there was no longer a weight on it. "It's my own fault. You wouldn't have gone so mad if it had been somebody else." A knife in the back. "I understand that there will be no more friendship between us, but I wanted to tell you that I am to blame. Forgive me if you can, and be happy." They hugged and walked away. Suddenly, Justin realized he no longer felt anger or resentment. This man had caused him the most pain of his life, the cause of 5 years of cheating and breaking up with his daughter. Justin looked after him and realized now this story could only be considered over for sure now. He took his time going home. His wife, daughter, and son were waiting for him there, and a restless dog who would certainly take him for a walk now. The pirate took a long time to get used to the city apartment, but still he adapted. He got better. Now he was fed several times a day, not as before, when not together with what God would send, and starved. Sometimes Justin even missed those times. There was something good about them too. But it was definitely better now. Now he's got a family and a daughter, like a stone wall with her husband. And the dog waits at home, warm and nourished, except that he's not friends with Alaska, the cat she brought from the village. She couldn't leave him there either, but this is the little things that only added color to the bright and rich picture of their lives. If you liked the story, please support me with the thumbs up button. It's just one click for you. But to me, it is very important. All the best to you.